Hello, it is Cami Kidder back with another episode of Throw Like a Girl TV, and today we're talking about fantasy camps. What is the deal with a fantasy camp? Have you ever heard of one? If not, they're not just for baseball. In fact, there are fantasy camps for just about anything that you could dream of having as a career. Oh dear. There's some mad construction going on outside, so hopefully it's not too chaotic with the jackhammering because, yikes, it's been going on for weeks, it seems. Anyway, fantasy camps. There are survival fantasy camps, cooking fantasy camps, race car driving, even a cosmonaut one, rock and roll. So yeah, if this is what I always want to do with my life, but I'm not, then there's a place you can go and spend a bunch of money and live out that dream. Baseball is no exception. In fact, I'm not sure they invented it, but it kind of feels like they did. So right now there are 24 major league teams that have fantasy camps. The only teams that don't, I thought they would just be the newer teams because sort of the big deal, right, is that you're at the spring training complex. You have the official uniform. Everybody knows your name because it's on your uniform, which is really cool. You're using the locker room facilities, you're using the trainer facilities. But the coolest part is that the coaches are the guys you grew up watching on TV. For me, Jim Rice, Dwight Evans, Carl Yastrzemski, Louis Tiant, Bob Stanley, guys like that are your coaches. You're having a drink with them. Louis is a big cigar smoker. I'm not, but you could have a cigar with Louis. And you can just talk about maybe not baseball, maybe like life stuff. So that's the cool big draw, right? So if you're a new team, like say the Marlins, maybe you don't have those kind of guys in your stable because, I don't know, here's a thought. I think fantasy camps are probably going to go away because the guys that go are, they don't have baseball players like that anymore, right? So if you're a marquee name, Derek Jeter is not doing fantasy camps. Can you imagine A-Rod? Oh my God, what a nightmare. Manny Machado, there's just too much strutting and ego and money. They're not going to go down and hang out with a bunch of old guys for $3 or $4 grand just to put on a baseball uniform again. Now, I could be wrong. Some people say Derek Jeter's a nice guy, but it seems like that celebrity baseball player has taken all the focus from your sort of everyday guy. Like Rick Burleson was my favorite when I was growing up. Rick Burleson is somebody you can see at a fantasy camp. Dustin Pedroia, he's a hell of a nice guy, but I'm not sure that that's kind of in his future. See, anyway. So there are no Tampa Bay Rays fantasy camp, no Miami Marlins fantasy camp, no Toronto Blue Jays, which I think is a little strange because they've been around for a while, and no Washington Nationals, again, a newer team, even though they were the Expos, but if you're going to have a fantasy camp, you know, you're going to have an Expos camp, probably not. And then the two Texas teams, so maybe fantasy's just not a thing in Texas, but there's no Astros camp and no Rangers. But there's Padres, Red Sox, Yankees, of course, White Sox, Cubs, Colorado Rockies. So if it's your team and baseball is your thing, there's a fantasy camp for you. They generally happen right before spring training. So January, early February, great time to be in Florida or Arizona. And it's just sort of a really, I'm hesitating because I didn't have the experience that I thought I was going to have from reading the brochure and talking to my father. When I went, I was the only woman, and there were 95 guys, and even the coaches didn't seem to really get why I was there. Like, this is a fantasy that I could have too because girls play baseball. But nobody seemed to think that that was not even like it was wrong, but it just wasn't really a possibility. Like, you can't possibly know what you're doing, you know. And then They do have a rule at fantasy camp. They have to be over 30 at most camps to go, because you do get a bit of a Yahoo factor there, where you've got guys coming down that think they got missed, right? So I'm going to get scouted now, even though I work in a cubicle in New York City. But they're going to find me now because they missed me before when I was playing in college or when I was playing in high school. So to cut down on that, you got to be over 30. They don't want 22-year-olds coming down there trying to show off, going to hurt somebody kind of thing. It's supposed to be fun. But still, even guys that are in their 40s and 50s, I think they still, some of them have that idea in their head that maybe they'll get noticed. And because of that, me being there as a woman, or my dad being there as an old guy, because my dad, I think, was in his 60s, maybe 66 when he started going, and then he went until he couldn't really throw a baseball anymore, so he went until maybe he was 72 or 73. They didn't want us on their team, right? We were like, pick last in gym, because we were going to like ruin the chances of winning the fantasy camp, which is truly one of the most ridiculous sentences that's ever been said, because there is really no winning. I mean, it's just bragging rights and some photographs. I don't even think there's a trophy, but maybe they hand out replica World Series rings, and maybe that's a really big deal. We all like to win, but I think what a lot of people don't understand when they go to a fantasy camp is it isn't just your fantasy. It's everybody's fantasy that's here. And we all pay the same amount of money, and there's 100 of us. And if your fantasy is to be the star and win the game, so's mine, and so's this guy's, and so's this guy's. So you don't really get to strut around like you're saving us all. And I doubt he's watching my YouTube channel, but he knows exactly who he is. And so do anybody who went to camp with me. They know who this guy is. But yeah, you ruin other people's fantasy by trying to hog all the fantasy for yourself. That being said, interesting, there's an author who wrote a book, Andrew Potter, and it's called The Authenticity Hoax: How We Get Lost Trying to Find Ourselves, How We Get Lost Finding Ourselves. And he says the main person, the main demographic that goes to a fantasy camp is an educated, white, middle-aged male who fear they've gotten too comfortable, too old, or too unnecessary. Which says a lot. That should have been in the brochure, because if I had read that, I would have known more about what I was walking into. I get it. I get it. We all have that, right? We're all getting older, and we're all maybe not feeling like we realized our potential, and there's a big struggle there and stuff. But none of that is my fault because I'm a woman and I want to play baseball too. But fantasy camps do add $3 to $5 billion, it's estimated, to the economy, and that's all of them, because this is an expensive thing to do. So it's around, we're going to say $5 to $6 grand. Sometimes that includes your airfare, sometimes it doesn't. They're usually about a week long, and I would imagine the cosmonaut one is significantly more expensive. And if you're going to hang out with Roger Daltrey from The Who or something, then that fantasy experience is probably much more expensive as well. There's one that you can be like a TV soap opera person, and I think that one's in the $12,000 range. So if you've got money, there are plenty of ways to spend it, which is always the case, right? But, these things are cool, right? Because we shouldn't live our lives with regret and wondering what if, and wondering, but just to have the experience, that's what they say about life, right? It's not about the past or the future. It's about the present, and it's a gift, and live in it, live in the moment. So the first time you hit the ball out of the outfield and you get to first base should be a fantasy moment. It doesn't have to be about the championship. It can be about just camaraderie in the locker room. For my dad, being on a team again after 60 years or 50 years, that was his fantasy. So, and meeting the big guys and stuff. But, you can go to a card show and meet Jim Rice, or you can go to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony and meet Carlton Fisk. It's not like you have to go to fantasy camp to meet these folks, but it is a different level of connection. So one last thing to talk about here is women's fantasy camp. So the only team that has a fantasy camp specifically for women is, of course, everyone's favorite, the Red Sox. And that camp just is starting today. It's going on middle of January, and it's a 5-day camp, maybe 4-day camp. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a much smaller profile. I think they're limited to, I think they do 4 teams, so maybe it's like 44 women or something like that. And it's a little lower price, it's $2,500, but it's mostly the same pros. But what they've also added is some notable female coaches and players, because you may not know this, because a lot of people don't, and it's part of my mission in life to let people know, but we have in this country a women's national baseball team. So they've had coaches who are players on the national team come and coach. And there's also more standouts like an Isla Borders, who actually played men's professional baseball back in the 90s. And she is a coach at the fantasy camp. Plus your Rich Gedmans and people like that who are just heck of nice people that you like to hang out with and learn about baseball from. And those guys will tell you that they actually prefer coaching women, because women are more coachable. Women are more, okay, tell me what I don't know. Tell me how to get better. Tell me how to do this or how to do that. Whereas men are like, I already know everything, because not all men, of course, not all women, So that's kind of the deal. That fantasy camp's going on right now, and they are the only one. And the reason I say they're the only one with their own fantasy camp is because the Yankees do not allow women at their men's camp. I guess it's private enterprise. You can keep women out, even though it seems really super dumb, because it's like half the population, and women actually earn money and can spend it too. And women are huge Yankee fans. They have like a little smaller thing. It's kind of more of a skills camp, kind of a weekend thing. And I'm sure that women go to that and enjoy it. But it's not a fantasy camp, because it's just a different level of thing. So when the Red Sox said that they were going to have this women's camp, I was like, Having been to 2 of the regular camps, the full camps, or the official camps, whatever you want to call it other than men's baseball camp, I was just like, this seems like a really bad idea, because when you have a special thing over here for women, aren't you really saying that's because we don't want you here, which is what the Yankees say. So we're going to do this thing here, Fantasy Camp Light, for you women, because we're not allowing you at our real camp. And I talked with some of the organizers of the Red Sox Women's Fantasy Camp, because I had that probably fairly rare experience of going to the other one. Again, I was the only woman that year of 95 guys. I know there's other women who've been, because they're friends of mine, but it's a pretty small pool. And so I said some of the things that are special about it. And they've really honored that, and they've really taken it and run with it, and they have a tremendous return rate, which I think is, pretty much the ultimate endorsement, right? You can read all the reviews you can have online, but if 80 or 90% of your previous year people are coming back again for this once in a lifetime experience, you're onto something. You're doing something right, because nobody's going to pay a bunch of money to have a bad time. More than once. So, if you are a baseball fan, and you might want to check it out, and you can start saving your pennies for next year, because like I said, the Red Sox Women's Fantasy Camp's going on right now. One of the other things that's cool is these lovely women, as long as we still have them on this earth, which I hope is another 20 years, but reality is reality. Maybelle and Shirley, Maybelle Blair, Shirley Berkovich were players in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. They have their own custom bobblehead, and they go to the fantasy camp to hang out as inspiration and celebrity guests, and maybe give a Q&A and talk about what it was like to play baseball in the 40s and 50s. They both played in the 50s. But Mary Moore, who does not have a bobblehead, who's also equally awesome. She's going this year as well and has been in previous years. So that's another reason to go, is just sort of like, wow, here's like living legend history right in front of me, and they care about baseball and they played professional baseball. Back in the time when a woman couldn't own a house or open a bank account in her own name, that's incredible, right? It's so incredible to think about professional athletes before Title IX, before the NCAA, before all of that stuff. And they have a bobblehead, which is so cool. Anyway, that is pretty much my deal from today on Fantasy Camp here on Thrill Like a Girl TV. If you like our content, please share it. Please like us. Please comment below. Please follow us on social media. We're TLAG, Throw Like a Girl Movie, at that's our Twitter, that's our Instagram, and that's our Facebook. There's a website for the movie, throwlikeagirlmovie.com, which is under construction, and we are just thrilled to be here. So I really appreciate you tuning in and seeing what we have to say, and please start a conversation. Let's talk about, why don't the Colorado Rockies have a women's fantasy camp? Why don't the San Diego Padres? Why don't the Chicago White Sox? Shouldn't these teams also be going, what the Red Sox is doing over here seems to be extremely lucrative and very fun and popular. Why wouldn't we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to include and invite and welcome our female fans into something that makes us money, right? So listen up, MLB. Female fans, we don't just want a sparkly hat with rhinestones on it. We want to be included. We want to be invited. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be tolerated. All right, we'll see you on the bases. Thanks for watching.